DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. I'm Madeline, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. For those of you that are familiar with DreamBank, welcome back. And for those of you that this is your first time joining us, welcome. Here at American Family Insurance, we believe communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. That's why we created DreamBank, an inspirational community destination and digital experience dedicated to dreamers everywhere. From our daily event series to immersive signature programs, which I have a fun one to tell you about in just a moment, there's something for every dreamer. Our always free offerings are designed to help you overcome your obstacles and celebrate the dream journey and stay motivated. We have an exciting DreamBank signature event coming up called Dream Camp. Dream Camp is an immersive 3-day program running this fall from October 15th to the 17th, where we'll guide 6 campers as they clearly define their dream, create a strategic plan, and address real and perceived obstacles that can keep them from taking the next steps in their dream pursuit. Applications are now open until July 19th, and I will drop the link in the chat in just a moment if you are interested in signing up for Dream Camp. Now, I would like to introduce you to today's speaker, Erika Cruz. She is a respected, today's speaker, Erika Cruz. She is a respected coach, speaker, and founder of the Courage-Driven Latina coaching program. And I will pass it off to you, Erika.
Amazing. Thank you so much. The DreamBank team has been such a pleasure to work with. Welcome, everybody. I'm very excited about today's topic because we're talking all about how to go from being doubtful to courageous, how you can go from really living in fear to your most brave and courageous self. We're going to talk about how to lead with courage, even when you're afraid. And the truth is, we are all afraid at some point in our lives. So it doesn't matter if you are looking to start a business, move your way up in your career, start dating after a divorce. All of this requires courage. So this will be relevant to you no matter your age, no matter where you are in your life. So let's go ahead and get into this presentation. And I just want to first thank you all for being here and thank yourself for being here, because taking an hour out of your day to really work on becoming the best version of yourself requires celebration, and I would love to celebrate you. All right, so here's where we're going. I am going to describe who you are. I'm going to let you know if you're in the right place. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am. We're going to go over what it is that you want, what it is that you desire, and what's standing in your way. And then we are going to end with the solution. I'm going to share 4 strategies that I've used with my clients that have proven to work over and over that you can take with you to help you go from living in fear to living in courage. And then we're going to end with Q&A. And as Madeline mentioned, please grab something to write with, because you probably will want to take notes on anything that you are reflecting on. And I would also recommend that you revisit this presentation. The DreamBank team will be sharing this on YouTube, so you will have access to it. The first time you hear things, sometimes, you're only going to really retain a certain percentage of it. Some of it can just go over your head. So I do invite you to revisit this presentation, especially because it may even be more relevant when you are at a different phase of your life. All right, so let's get into it. You are in the right place if you are, and you may be more than one of these, okay? If you are the clarity seeker, so you know that you're looking for clarity on your purpose, you're not really sure what's next in your life, but you know there must be more. There's this deep feeling of, I know I'm meant for more. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know that there's something else for me. Maybe you are in the middle of transitioning to a new job. Maybe you're looking to transition into a new career, maybe looking to start dating after being single for a really long time, and you're really just looking for what is next. Or you are the hesitator. You know what you want. You already know what you want, but you haven't gotten yourself to do it. So maybe you kind of start and you stop. You feel like you lack experience. Maybe you find yourself doing research. Let's say you want to launch a podcast. You find yourself doing the research on all the different ways of starting a podcast, but you don't actually start it. So your dreams are really living in your head, not in your reality just yet. So you have the clarity, you just need the courage to go after it. Number three would be the small player. Maybe you've already started on your dreams. Maybe you already started a project, a podcast, a business, applying for jobs, but you know that you're playing small. Maybe you are applying for the jobs that you're overqualified for instead of reaching for those that would stretch you in your career. Or maybe you have started a business and you're not allowing yourself to sell, right? You're almost talking people out of working with you because you're playing small. There's this feeling of like, oh my gosh, am I good enough? Is this actually going to be what's right for me? And then, oops, there we go. Number four, maybe you are the rebel. You feel like you're the black sheep or the unicorn, just because unicorn sounds a little bit more fun, of your family. You are maybe the cycle breaker. You don't really feel like you belong and you're looking for a supportive community of driven individuals, driven women, just aligned community. Maybe the environment you're currently in, you start to feel like, oh my gosh, is there something wrong with me? Because I want something so different than the people around me. And as I mentioned before, you may be more than one of these. So I believe you are able to type in the chat. Go ahead and tell me what you are. Just go ahead and list the numbers. So maybe you say, hey, I really resonate with 1 and 3. I really resonate with 1 and 2, or maybe 4 and 3. Go ahead and let me know in the chat. The hesitator. Okay. Yep. Yeah, so you already know what you want. You're like, I just need the courage. Okay, Jennifer says 1 and 4, 2 and 4, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, all of them, all of the above. Yeah, I even myself have found myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really stuck in the hesitator right now, or I'm really stuck in feeling the rebel. And how can we embrace that? 1 through 3. Yeah. Okay, great. I'm so glad that this was resonating. This is helpful for me to know as I go through the presentation so that I can speak to these different identities. And again, we're complex beings, so you're probably going to be more than one. All right, amazing. Well, I'm glad that this is resonating. You are in the right place. So no matter which one you identify with, here's what I know. You're doubting yourself and your abilities, or you are really tired of letting fear win. You're probably tired of starting and stopping, and then tired of letting other people's opinions stop you. And as much as you've tried to ignore this desire, right, whatever it is you want to do, you can't stop thinking about it. I remember feeling this way, and I get into this a little bit later when I fully introduce myself. I remember thinking about starting a food blog for 2 years before I actually did it. And here's what you also know. You've already decided that your future is going to be different than your past, but you don't know exactly how or where to start. And here's what you want. You want to be the most brave, courageous, confident version of yourself so that you could finally start the Instagram page, start the TikTok page, and actually post. Start the podcast and actually interview people and actually get through episodes. You want to decide on your purpose, or start the business, or go on the date, or ask for the raise at work. You want to impact the community that you care a lot about. If you are here, you care not just about your own growth, you also care about giving back and helping others. And you really just are ready to have that Beyonce, J-Lo energy to you. You're ready to step into that version of yourself. And I want you to know that this is all possible for you. I have a mastermind group that it's called Magnetic Mastermind, and we are doing something called an abundance plan right now, or an abundance activation. So for the entire month of July, we are participating in a group abundance activation. And one of the things that we talked about, especially in this book that we're reading all about abundance, what you see in other people is also possible for you. So the abundance that you see for other people is also available to you. And I want you to know that anything that you see in other people, maybe you find yourself like, oh, well, that person already has 100,000 followers, or that person already has a top podcast, or that person already made it to the VP level, or that person already has the perfect partner. And we sometimes can compare ourselves to other people. And if we don't believe that we are worthy of it, it makes us feel really crappy inside. It makes us feel like, oh, well, that person, well, their life is different. And I want to remind you that what you see in other people is also possible for you, or else it wouldn't be visible to you. You wouldn't see it if it wasn't possible to you. You just have to believe it's also possible for you. So I want you to know anything you want is possible for you. The fact that you see me up here doing this presentation, the fact that you see your role models doing what they're doing also tells you it's available for you. And I've supported over 200 clients with my framework that I'm going to teach you today so that you can make this a reality. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Erika. I am a coach, I'm a speaker. I'm also the founder of Courage Driven Latina, which is my group program where I've tested all of these different concepts inside of Courage Driven Latina. Everybody works on a courage project. You're going to learn a little bit more about it because I'm going to invite you to do one yourself. And there's so many things that come up as people are working on a courage project. So we're going to go into that. I'm also the host of the podcast Chingona Revolution. The word Chingona means badass. So it's the badass revolution. I am what I call myself a professional failure. I have failed so much. Actually, Michael Jordan said this in like one of his Nike commercials. I have failed so much, and that is why I am successful. And I truly believe that that is a key to success, allowing yourself to fail. And 4 years ago, I was in your exact shoes. I was all of those different profiles. I was the hesitator. I was playing small. I was seeking clarity. I just felt misunderstood. Oh my gosh, I have the Michael Jordan quote on my wall. I love it, Chris. Yes, thank you so much for sharing. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about my journey later, how I went from 4 years to 4 years ago, where I was 4 years ago to where I am now. So here's the thing. I don't know exactly what you want to do. Maybe one of the things I listed is exactly what you're looking for, but whatever it is that you want to do, I do know what is stopping you from getting there. And here's what it is. You're not believing in yourself. You're letting self-doubt and fear win. So that narrative of what if I fail? What will other people think of me? And here's how I know that you're doubting yourself. Here's how you know that you're doubting yourself, because sometimes we believe our story so much that it just feels like, oh no, this is reality. Of course I'm not capable. But here are the signs that let me know you're doubting yourself. You may sound a little bit like, oh, I need a certification before I can start. I want to start a business, but I have to go get another degree or I need another certification. Maybe you are saying to yourself, I want to, but what if I fail? The other one is, what will people think of me in my culture? So my parents are from Mexico. We speak Spanish. There's a big term that we use, ¿qué va a decir la gente? Which literally translates to what will the people say? And it's so funny because it's like, who is the people, right? Who are they? Because what I've learned is that people are so much more worried about themselves than they are about us. But as human beings, we can make our experience so much about us, and we put that the spotlight on ourselves, and we feel like everybody else is looking at us the way that we're looking at ourselves. So it's such a valid fear that isn't real. And then the other one is, oh, I just need to do more research. I hear this so much, right? I need to do more research. I don't feel ready yet. But the truth is, we're never going to feel ready. This is a big one, especially if it's like if you're offering a service or something like that. Once I have a website, people think they need a website already. Or the other one, there's already so many makeup companies out there. There's already so many people offering I don't know, lash extensions. There's already so many people with podcasts. Oh, I've already missed the boat. There's already so many blogs out there. Um, my current situation isn't that bad. This is a big one, and just culturally as well, right? We've been taught from generations before us that we should just be grateful for what we have. Thank you for this. Number one is me all day, even though I don't need more certifications. Yes. And, this is coming from somebody who has had a lot of certifications, a lot of degrees. I have a few AA degrees. I have a couple of bachelor's degrees, well, like double majored. And then I became a yoga teacher and I got that certification. And then I got a mindfulness certification. And then I started coaching and I was like, you know what? Let me make sure I even like this before I go get a certification. So we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But my current situation isn't that bad. A lot of us have been conditioned just even from previous generations or maybe our parents. You should just be grateful for what you have. And while, yes, we should always be grateful for what we have, sometimes that narrative allows us to keep playing small. It doesn't allow us to go for something bigger, which is literally what my next one. I should just be grateful. My parents didn't have half of these opportunities. And these are all so valid, right? So actually, let me go back. Tell me in the chat which one of these resonate with you. You can just put the number down since I know that they're kind of long, and I'll get a sip of water while you do that. Olga says, I can resonate with number 7. Yeah, my current situation isn't that bad. Cindy says number 2, 1 through 4. Tammy, Victoria says 2. Becky says 2, 3, and 8. Oh, all the time 8. 1 and 8. Yeah. And these are all so valid, right? I'm not telling you that these are not valid because I have been um I've believed all of these at some point in my life too. And sometimes I still do, right? Sometimes I'm like, oh, am I stretching this? What are people going to think of me if I do that? What will people think of me if I post that photo, if I do this thing? Amazing. Thank you all so much for your engagement. Ellie says 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7. Yes. Okay. So I was in your shoes. I was in tech for 8 years. This is the job that I got shortly after graduating from college. I had been I thought I was going to work there for a year, ended up just, getting stuck there, as people say. And I had just called off an engagement. And that was a big thing, especially culturally, because I mean, coming from a Mexican family, it was expected that I would get married very young. But there I was working in tech for 8 years, had just called off an engagement. I was interested in starting a food blog, but I didn't feel like I could because I was like, oh no, I'm not a chef. Who am I to do this? I was afraid of what people would say. I was so overwhelmed by creating a website because I wanted to look legit. I was comparing myself to all of the other food bloggers that I saw online. So I thought about the food blog for 2 years because I was waiting until I felt ready. I was waiting until I felt confident. I was waiting for the courage. And the thing is, we're trying to get rid of the doubt, right? We're trying to get rid of the fear before we do whatever it is that we want to do. But what I want to remind you is that the doubt is always going to come back. You're never going to get to this place where you feel fully confident when there's no doubt in your mind, because the moment you start to take the action, more doubt comes in. Like, let me just give you a simple example. Let's say you're like, okay, once I become a manager, then I'm not going to feel doubt anymore. And then you become a manager and you're like, oh crap, now I really feel like a fraud because now I'm responsible for all these people. And the doubt, we have this term in coaching, it's new levels, new devils. And the more you move up, the more there's just going to be problems and doubt at every level. So what I want to invite you to do is learn to manage the doubt, learn to manage the fear. I experienced doubt on a weekly basis. I mean, there was a time when prepping for these presentations really was a whole day affair. I would be so nervous. At this point, I've done them so much that I'm pretty confident in them. But there's other things that still cause me a lot of stress, a lot of doubt. And here's what I want to invite you to know. Doubt is nothing more than data telling you what needs a little bit of love and work. And I'm going to give you some examples. And my favorite word is, or my favorite phrase is, doubt is data. Doubt is data. Doubt's always giving us information. And here's a few examples. If you're telling yourself, I need a certification or degree before I can start, this simply means that you want to learn more about this topic. You have a desire to learn more about the topic. And if you are fearing or having the thought of what if I fail, this is an invitation to explore, why is it that you are equating your worth to your success? Like, why does failure actually have to be a bad thing? What if failure was a great teacher? And here's what the solution is. You just need to start. It sounds really simple. It is simple, but it's not easy. This is actually a big phrase in the mindfulness community. If you are a meditator, you've probably heard this. Simple, not easy. Everything is simple doesn't mean it's easy. So the solution is very simple. You really do just need to start with the self-doubt, with the fear. And here's the thing. A lot of times we hear, I just want to be fearless. Well, no, we actually don't want to be fearless, because fear plays in a very important role in our lives. The definition of courage is not fearlessness. The definition of courage is to take action even though you feel fear. It means to move forward with the fear. That is the definition of courage. And that's what I would love you to embody. I don't want you to embody fearlessness. I want you to embody courage. So a lot of times we think that we need to feel confident in order to take the action, but it's like, okay, once I feel ready, I'm going to do it. But what I'm telling you is like, no, we actually have to reverse the formula. The confidence comes when you begin to take action. And I'm just going to give you a few examples that you can kind of relate to in your life. Think about the first day on the job, how you felt. You did not feel confident at all, right? Because it was the first, you didn't know what the culture was like. You didn't know what your job was like. You didn't know what your strengths were. You didn't know what you were really walking into. Another example, let's say that you're married. Think about the first date with your partner. You did not feel confident going into that first date. There was a lot of unknown, there was a lot of fears, but yet if you've been married, now you have no problem passing gas in front of your partner maybe, or like yelling at them to put their socks where they go, or closing the cabinet drawers, right? It's a lot has changed. Or just whenever you first became a parent, the first child versus the following ones, a very different experience. Anything new is going to be scary. So if we waited to be confident in all these things, we wouldn't start anything. So I'm inviting you, how can you reverse the formula? But rather, I need to feel confident saying, hey, it's going to be messy in the beginning, but that is how I learn. That is how I build the confidence. When you just start, that is when you turn into your most courageous self. And here's what happens when you start. When I finally started the food blog, it was called The Nutty Oven. Here we are. And this is my old studio where I lived when I worked in tech. And the Nutty Oven was my passion project. It wasn't really a money maker. It was just to get me into my creative work. Once I kicked that off, once I was like, I really got to this point where I was over myself. You know, that point when you're just like, I'm tired of hearing myself talk. I'm tired of the excuses. That's where I got. And once I started the Nutty Oven, I did it for about 6 months. And then I was like, you know what? I love baking. I don't want to do this for other people because it was so much work. Like you have to take photos of the food, the recipe development, people mess up the recipes. Like it was a whole thing. I was like, I want to bake because I love to bake. Don't think I want to document it. But that got me into content creation. And then I was starting to practice yoga. So then I became a yoga instructor. But this led me to this. And I started posting my yoga online and I started teaching at a studio. And I graduated from yoga teacher training at the end of 2019. And then we all know what happened in 2020. All of the gyms closed for a while. So the door was really closed into my face. And I was like, okay, I can't teach yoga anymore, at least not the way I thought that was my future. I was like, okay, I'm going to open a yoga studio. But because I was already posting about yoga, and yoga is so much more than just the physical practice, there's the mindset component, there's mindfulness, there's the meditation piece. I started posting on a little app called TikTok. And this was at the beginning of 2020. Everybody thought I was crazy because it was the kids app where people danced, but I saw an opportunity. And I started posting all about self-development on TikTok. And then my TikTok grew from no followers to 12,000 followers to 40,000 followers. And then once I got to about 100,000 followers, I thought, hey, something's here. Something's here. So then I ended up creating a TikTok course, the ultimate TikTok guide to get started today. And from there, I really started to grow my audience. And then people started asking me, hey, I started doing little free classes like this about how to stay motivated during the pandemic, how to post content on TikTok. And then people started asking me if I offered one-on-one coaching. And I was like, what in the world is one-on-one coaching? I don't even know what this is. So I Googled it, and that's what taught me what coaching was. So a few months later, that is what turned into my coaching program, Purpose Driven Latina, which is now Courage Driven Latina. Later that year, I ended up interviewing Luis Fonsi. He's the guy who sings Despacito with Justin Bieber for Hispanic Heritage Month. And then this happened in October. And then January of the following year, so this was 2021, I ended up on the front page of the New York Times because I left my tech job during the Great Resignation. And I was just so public already that my good friend and I ended up on the front page. Here we are celebrating life that we no longer worked in the tech industry. And then later that year, I started my podcast. So if I would have waited to feel ready, none of this would have happened. But just starting and allowing myself, right? A lot of people could look at this and say, oh, the food blog failed. Well, yeah, you can look at it that way, but what if like that failure was the redirection? And then just think about this, right? Getting a yoga teacher certification and then the yoga studio is closing. That felt like such a failure, but that pivoted me here. And then this pivoted me here and this pivoted me here, and everything led to something else. When you're just starting, sometimes we want the full picture before we can start. I didn't know baking muffins was going to lead to a podcast that has over 100,000 downloads. I had no idea that it was going to lead me to being here with all of you today, but that really was the start of it. And it's because I allowed myself to start imperfectly. So here are just some examples of some of my clients who've also allowed themselves to just start. So Gia actually became, her project that she worked on in my program was all about self-love. And she's also an esthetician. When we met, she was a recruiter in the tech industry, and the pandemic also changed a lot for her. And when she allowed herself to just start, she allowed herself to use her own experience with self-love and skincare and create this different experience of providing facials for individuals and also self-love coaching all in one, which is really cool. Rosie she's a recovery coach because she went through her own recovery process herself, and she ended up helping people with their recovery process. So a lot of times our pain can become our purpose. Just wanted to share examples from other people that weren't just myself. And thank you, Olga. This is so amazing. Congratulations, says iPhone. Thank you all so much. I've been planning on opening a nonprofit for the Latino community, but I've been doubting myself. Can I do this? What if I fail? I need more time to prepare myself. Yeah, Olga, I'm so happy to talk to you also during Q&A because I have some ideas for you. I'm actually going to go over the strategies. And then Madeline, correct me if I'm wrong. We have a time for Q&A, right?
We do.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I see a hand is raised. I'm just going to get through these strategies really quick. Shouldn't take very long. And then we'll get into Q&A because I would love to hear from you. All right. So how, right? I'm like, okay, here's what's possible. Now tell us how we can do this, Erika. Here are 4 strategies that I use with my clients that work really well. The first one is you have to start thinking about your dream as a project. And I like to call this a courage project because it excites you, but it has to scare you. And that's the key, right? Because remember, courage means that you do it even though you're afraid. So it is a project that excites you, it scares you, but it has to be service oriented. Here's why. Whenever something is focused on giving back and on something bigger than yourself, you are less likely to give up. Whenever you have a strong why behind things, you're less likely to give up. So here's the thing. It requires courage, but you know that whenever you do it, you're going to feel more fulfilled. And it can be business focus, life focus, healing focus. I mean, you choose whatever your dream is, that can be your project. I'm going to turn on my fan because it is very hot in my room. One moment. Okay. And here are just some examples of what people have done. So one of my previous clients, Kim, had started an Instagram live series to discuss healing and mental health in the Latinx community. One of my other clients, Melody, actually started a candle business, and I now use her candles for all of my events. They are non-toxic. They are amazing. She puts little crystals in them too. Victoria is a client of mine who took her first solo trip. She went internationally. She lives in Hawaii. She went to the UK by herself. That was an amazing courage project. That felt very scary. But once she went on that solo trip, her confidence just skyrocketed. She had such a good time. She met so many people. She had an experience of a lifetime. One of my clients, we call them CDLs, and built the confidence to start dating again. This one we kept confidential. She had actually gone through a divorce and wanted nothing to do with dating because she was afraid, but deep down she did. So that was her courage project. I have another client who started a life coaching business, and then one client who started a running group for women. This one was actually really fun because she is a trail runner. And historically, running trails has been pretty dangerous for women. I mean, you can imagine like being out in the woods. Like one, you could probably see a bear, but like even scarier, there could be just like a crazy person out in the wilderness. So she started this group of women that would meet up and then they would run trails together. So it was like a running group, but on trails, which was very fun. So here's why a courage project works. It's specific, it's simple, and it's connected to a bigger purpose. So for those of you listening, like for example, Olga, I think it was Olga who was talking about the nonprofit. So maybe like an example for you could be a courage project would be I would do like different versions of it. And the first version of yours that I would probably have you work on for like the first month or two would be have an informational interview with individuals in the nonprofit sector, like 2 a week for the next 4 weeks, so that I can learn a little bit more about what goes into a nonprofit. And maybe the next version of that is like just start the nonprofit. What is it going to be? How can you start to do that work without the formation of the nonprofit, just to validate if you even like it? Because for example, the food blog, I actually did start a website. I did all the things only to realize it wasn't even what I wanted to do. So just getting started on the work allows you to test out if it's something that you like or don't like. So I would definitely use something like a courage project where you specifically write down what you're going to be working on for how long and then test it out. And then the reason a courage project works is because you know what you're working on. You kind of know what's next. And this is an example from one of my clients. Before she had really lost her passion for being a health coach, she felt overwhelmed with where and how to pick it up after she had fallen off of her own fitness routine. But after she implemented a courage project, her courage project was post imperfectly on Instagram 3 times a week so that I can educate my community and bring on clients. Then that's when she really began to build up her confidence. She showed up on social media consistently. She took on clients. She held her first little webinar, like what we're doing right now. And it worked really well for her. I'm going to skip through this just so that we could get through this and get to Q&A. The second strategy is community, right? If you identified with the rebel where you felt like, okay, I just feel like I have different goals than the people around me. I have different aspirations. You really are in need of a community of aligned individuals. Community is not just a nice to have, it really is the big differentiator. We need community for survival as humans. I mean, if we think historically, when we all lived in tribes, the worst type of punishment that somebody could receive is getting removed from the tribe. And that meant death, because on our own, we couldn't really survive. In tribes, there was the hunters, there was the gatherers, there was the healers. They had all of these different components that would help us survive within community. So our brains have not evolved that much from that time when we lived in tribes. So being almost oust from a community, right? This is why bullying is such a big deal. It takes such a toll on our mental health. So community isn't just a nice to have, but like, I'm just going to use Olga as an example because she already shared what she's looking for. If Olga's only surrounded by people who are telling her, oh, you should just be grateful for what you have. No, why would you waste your time with like a nonprofit? Or like, what if you fail? That's so much time and energy. Are you sure you want that responsibility? That is not conducive to her starting this nonprofit. What would actually be important for her is to be surrounded by other nonprofit owners, which I actually have a client who has a nonprofit that I'm happy to introduce you to. She's based in Texas. And her nonprofit has gotten funding. She's involved in many different things, but those are the people that you need around you, right? It's almost like a bodybuilder would never make fun of you for wanting to start to work out, or a public speaker would never make fun of you for trying to give a presentation. Only people who don't really understand what you're doing won't really be able to support you. So having an aligned community is one of the most important things. I'd almost argue this is the most important thing of all of the strategies I'm giving you. So we need community for survival. This gets hard when people around us shut down our dreams. So like, for example, when I told my mom I was leaving tech to start this business, she was like, you are insane. And I've already learned I don't go to my mom for business or dating advice, but I will go to her for recipes. I will go to her for certain things, or if I need to know how to get somewhere that like she goes and I don't really go there. So knowing who to go to for what is really important. And you can have multiple communities, right? Like your family can be for one thing, you can have business friends for business, or like if you are working on a creative project, maybe you have scrapbooking friends, maybe you have a book club. It's okay to have different groups. Community is definitely necessary. Ooh, let's see. You need a community that's going where you're going or is already there, right? Somebody who has similar goals or is already going. You nailed it. It's what discourages me from, yeah. Yes. Thank you all for the love in the chat. So here's one of my clients, Lizette. She had an immediate circle who really didn't provide support for her goals. She is a fitness instructor in Chicago. And this made it really hard for her to show up on social media because there was this fear of like, what are other people going to say about me? So she didn't really show up. But after having a supportive community around her, she said being surrounded by like-minded women who are on the same journey or even several steps ahead of me has been extremely beneficial and comforting to know that there's light at the end of the tunnel when self-doubt starts to take over. It is getting warmer in Chicago. I've been seeing her post. She's been doing fitness classes, like she did like mama mimosas or something like that, where moms would come and do a workout class and then they would end with mimosas. She did something else in the park. I mean, it's been really fun to watch her journey. And strategy number 3, you need a failure goal, which is so counterintuitive to what the brain wants to do. Right now, you're doing everything that you can to avoid failure, and you're not taking action that can result in failure. You're like, if it can fail, I'm not going to do it. I'm inviting you to do the opposite because we don't actually learn from success. We learn from failure. If everything in your life was always working out, can you imagine what type of person you'd be? Like, really just take a moment to reflect. If everything you did was a yes, what kind of character would you be? What would your life be like? Really, our lessons come from the things that did not work out. We learn so much from them. So inside my group program, a lot of these examples that I've been telling you, my clients participate in something called a failure challenge. And you could do this on your own, or maybe invite your own friends to do it with you. Maybe like for a week, let's share all of our fails with one another. Because whenever you are allowing yourself to take action that can result in failure, what happens? You inevitably also get more wins. Because if you're taking more action, yes, there could be more failure, but there's also going to be more wins. The goal is to take action on the things with a risk of failure. I'm going to give you some examples. Asking somebody on the date, that can result in failure, which is why we avoid it. But how can you allow yourself to take the risk of possible failure? Another example would be posting on social media. Well, what if I don't get many likes? That's a possibility of a failure. Another example would be asking somebody for an informational interview, right? That's a risk of failure. But if you ask, you could get a yes, right? Or you could get a like, you know what, I'm actually not the right person to speak with, but what about this person? You're really starting to open the doors instead of keeping the doors closed in the event that they're closed in your face. So the purpose is to show you that the fear of failure is actually worse than failure itself. And if you think back to a time when you did have a failure, maybe you didn't get a job or maybe something didn't work out, the fear of failure is usually way worse than failure itself. Like you're still alive, you're still here, it's actually okay. And the more you try and fail, the more you do end up succeeding, right? We were just talking about this. So here's an example for my clients. Before the failure challenge, my clients would spend their time overthinking and they were afraid of making the decision. They were afraid of making a decision in the event that they made the wrong one. This happens so much, right? We want to make the right decision that sometimes we just don't make a decision, and not making a decision sometimes is a decision. And after implementing the failure challenge, they had so many wins. One person posted on LinkedIn, the other person went to a heels class, somebody signed up for the LA Marathon, somebody developed a wellness training for their school staff, somebody dyed their own hair. And she was like, that was a horrible idea, but now I know what not to do. Somebody made offers because they had a business, somebody applied for jobs, somebody landed clients, somebody posted imperfectly on social media, and then somebody else created and set boundaries at work. So many wins, right? We call it the failure challenge, but there was so many wins from it. Strategy number 4, befriend fear. I've already talked about this a little bit, but the role of fear in our lives is that it ensures that we stay alive. It prevents us from getting too close to the edge of a cliff. It prevents us from entering incoming traffic. I mean, really think about it, right? Like, hey, you know who's fearless? Like 2-year-olds. Have you seen 2-year-olds, how dangerous they are? They are like on a mission to kill themselves. It's kind of crazy, right? Like they just have no comprehension of the consequences and they don't really know fear just yet. And we don't want you to be fearless because fear plays such an important role in your life. So if you can honor fear for the valuable role it has, yet call it out when it's holding you back from unharmful goals, you're going to win at life. So an example, like, yes, fear is going to ensure that you don't do something crazy, like, I don't know, walk into incoming traffic as the example here. But that same fear is like, don't speak up in the meeting. What if you sound stupid? Well, like, okay, if you sound stupid, you sound stupid, but you're still going to be fine at the end of that. If we can learn to differentiate the difference between real danger and what our brain is making seem dangerous, that is when we're going to win at life. So let's quickly recap. This is a fact. I think that was about the 2-year-old, right? Yeah, I've seen my niece and nephew. So here's like we've covered a lot and I want to get into Q&A. So you want to become the most courageous, we call this chingona in Spanish. You want to become the most courageous version of yourself and finally start the project, the business, the creative dream that you have that you've been dreaming about. What's stopping you is the self-doubt, right? You're like, I need to have all this before I can start. And you aren't believing in yourself. You think that the solution is to become the most confident version of yourself and then you can get started. But what I'm telling you is you actually need to start and then the confidence and the courage comes later. So how? How do you do this? Through identifying a courage project, through it surrounding yourself with an aligned community, through making a failure goal, right? Like making it a goal to fail and then befriending fear, differentiating what's a real fear versus something I'm telling myself is fear. So Cindy asks, how do you find community? Such a good question. There's so many ways of doing this. Let's say that you have a passion for books. I would go to book signings. I would go to bookstores. I would try to join a book club, maybe Facebook groups. Like, so it's really about getting yourself in spaces that are aligned with your goals because other people are going to be there as well. I'm going to give you an example of how I found community. I tend to do like Latin dancing. So I'll do salsa and bachata, which my family comes from Mexico. So none of these are actually Mexican. They're Latino, but they're not Mexican. So I didn't grow up dancing this, but I started to dance when I was traveling. And once I came back to California, I was like, okay, I have to find my local salsa classes. And I went to a salsa class and I went by myself and people were like, are you crazy? But the thing is, when you go to these classes, you're dancing with everybody in the class because they're all there to learn. So you actually don't need to bring a partner. You don't need to bring friends. Like it actually works really well when you go alone. So I went alone and I ended up creating this great group of friends who I'm still friends with. We're having a 4th of July party. And I ended up meeting my boyfriend at the dance class. So a lot of times you just have to have the courage to go do things alone that are in the space that you want to be in. Like maybe going to a self-development conference, maybe going to, as I mentioned, a book signing, going to the things, finding activities, whether they're virtual or in person, even kind of like here, right? Like people in the chat that you can connect with. That would be if somebody's here, they're already in alignment with you. You're already kind of on the same vibe because you're into self-development. You're into becoming a better version of yourself. So even in the chat would be a great place to find people. I just modified my music for bachata rhythm. Oh, I love that. I love Latin dance. It's so beautiful. It really is. It is. It's so much fun. So remember, you really only have one life. Sometimes we are like, oh, I'll get to it later. But like, this is the one life, right? This isn't the practice life for the other one. This is it. So really think about what you want to do and allow yourself, give yourself the permission to explore this thing that you want to do. And a great way to think about this is what would you regret? There was a study done actually at a nursing home when people were in their final years. And the study that they did was they interviewed a bunch of people and they asked them about their biggest regret in life. And what they found was that people didn't regret the things they tried and failed at. So let's say they tried something and they failed, they didn't regret it. What they regretted was the things they did not try. And that's so powerful. So, the best way to start and implement these 4 strategies is through, as I mentioned, finding community. Obviously, this is something that I specifically help people with in my program. So if you're interested in the program, you can scan that QR code or just go to couragedrivenlatina.com, because these are the strategies we go through in my program. If this is not in alignment for you, I'm still going to give you just like some tips on how you can do it. So we can open it up to Q&A. As I mentioned, as people start raising their hand, I'll just tell you how I think you can start implementing these strategies on your own. If you're looking for community, go to places that are in alignment with what it is that you are looking to do. If you are looking to start a courage project, remember, it has to excite you, it has to scare you, and you have to be really specific about what you're going to do and for how long. Making it a goal to fail, you can really just keep a failure journal with you if you're doing it on your own. I think it's kind of best if you do it with somebody else. Maybe you can ask your friend group, like, hey, do you want to join a failure challenge with me? And then making fear your friend, honestly, writing down your fears and asking yourself, is this a legitimate fear, or is this something I'm making up in my mind? So yeah, I've been talking for a while, so I will see. Let's see, is there any questions?
Any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And then I know people are probably getting in their them in there. So I just want to do one more plug for our dream camp, that the applications are open right now. It is a 3-day in-person immersive experience, really helping people get clear on their dreams and kind of really figure out those next steps and giving you then the tools and guidance that you would need to actually like make those happen. And so I just put in the chat the link for our dream camp application. And then you also get coaching for 3 coaching sessions after camp session ends to really help people make progress on that dream pursuit forward. So this is our in-person activation dream camp. It is really fun. So I think if you are looking to actually start making progress and moving forward, but you might be a little scared, Dream Camp might be the thing for you. And so I'm just looking to see if any other questions have come in the chat. As of right now, I haven't seen any, but
I can review also if anybody has already asked a question, but I just wanted to mention that that is such a cool camp. So if anybody identified with the clarity seeker or the hesitator or the small player, this would be honestly any of the profiles I mentioned. I definitely think people should apply. Yes, can you put the QR code back? Yes, I actually have a stay connected. So this is all of my links where you can find the podcast. You can down below there's even like my Instagram, my TikTok, things like that. So you can scan that code.
perfect.
I'm
And then
sorry, that QR.
a question came in. It's kind of long, so hang in there with me. How did you become such a great speaker? In other words, how did you find your confidence? Did you take speech classes or just practice? I speak at conferences to be the voice of the vulnerable Latinx community as a community leader, but I get so nervous every time I present. I sometimes forget what I'm going to present. Any tips?
Yes. So as I mentioned, whenever we were talking about, you're not going to feel confident the first few times that you do things. I mean, I go back and I listen to some of my first videos or some of my first podcast interviews, and I cringe because I'm like, oh my goodness, poor younger version of Erika was so nervous. And it was, I mean, it was obvious to me because it's me. So this definitely is not something that came up overnight. It has been something that I've practiced. I would recommend that you take a note of everything that you want to say and practice it, because the more you practice it and the more you allow yourself to allow it to be second nature, that's when you become more confident at it. A strategy I didn't talk about today that I think might be really helpful for you is visualization. So actually, Olympic athletes use visualization a lot. 80% of Olympic athletes visualize. So that tells us that it works, right? If these top athletes are using visualization. So what I would suggest for you is not only practicing what it is that you want to say over and over and over, and if you can to an audience or in front of the mirror, it's going to feel silly, but also allowing yourself to kind of close your eyes and seeing yourself on that stage and already seeing yourself as this confident version, because our brain doesn't know the difference between imagination or reality. So we fear the things that are unfamiliar. And so if you've already seen yourself on that stage over and over and over, that's going to be really helpful. But the second and the most important thing I would say is when you're on that stage and you're worried about how do I look, right? How do I sound? It's the focus, the spotlight is almost on you. When you are speaking for such a fabulous cause, that I would invite you to think about the people who you are speaking about or that you are speaking for. So rather than putting the spotlight on yourself, who are you doing this for? And that just takes the pressure off of you, where it's such a purpose driven thing that you're doing. It's beautiful. How amazing, right? And how, like, what an honor that you get to do this. So when I'm sitting here talking, I'm actually not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about everyone here. I'm thinking about, okay, what are they possibly struggling with that I can talk to? And that allows me to not worry about if I mess up, to not worry about if I look silly. And it allows me to be in service. And what I find is that that is typically when my best presentations occur. So hopefully those tips help.
Perfect. I'm not seeing any other questions regarding this topic come in, or
I see one about visibility.
visibility.
How can one overcome the fear of visibility and increased
Oh,
expectations as a content creator? What is a good way to get a strong why to push through or feel long-standing motivation to do it and show up consistently? Yeah, so here's the thing. We think motivation is the one thing that gets us started, but motivation comes and goes, right? I mean, if you are a woman, then your motivation is going to vary depending on the day of the month, depending on where you are on your cycle. And that's just very real. There are, this week happens to be one of my high energy weeks. So it was perfect that we had this presentation and I'm getting a lot of things done this week. But next week, my energy will probably start to decline just because I've been tracking my cycle for a while. So I just want you to know that you're not going to have consistent energy, and that's okay. So just validating that. But the other thing would be the fear of visibility is real, right? It's very hard, especially if you I just anybody in today's society. I feel like there's this narrative of like, oh, just be humble and don't be too loud. And yet social media is inviting us to do this thing where we're just like, look at me. But I would almost say to what I mentioned to the person before, I want you to think about what, so here's some reflection questions for you. Why do you want to create content? So who is the content for? What do you want to what impact do you want to create in their lives? So like, I'll just give you an example for this presentation. So my why behind this presentation was to help you go from feeling fear to doing what you want to do. Because I know that if every single person in this webinar, in this class, took action on that dream that they have, the world would be a much better place. Like if you are out there creating content, somebody's going to be impacted by your content. If you are allowing yourself to date and allowing yourself to receive love, you are showing the younger generations that it's like you can heal from heartbreak. You are worthy of love no matter what your background is. So these are kind of my whys. My why is like, I know that if you execute your, I'm going to say courage project, because that's why we talk about it in my program. If you execute your courage project, the world is a much better place. When you become a better version of yourself, everybody benefits. And that's where my brain goes. So for you, why do you want to create content? How do you want to impact people? Why is it important for people to see your content? And then I almost want you to think about that spotlight theory that I was just talking about. Right now, the spotlight is on you, like, oh my gosh, what if I'm visible? But I want you to think about the spotlight on your audience. How is what I say and do going to impact the audience and help them? And even the days when you don't feel motivated, like there's going to be high motivation days and low motivation days. So because we're talking specifically about content creation, maybe on the high motivation days, that's when you get on video, that's when you create reels, maybe you do carousels. But on the low motivation days, maybe you just post a story with a photo that is from the past and you just write a little message on it. So there's different ways of showing up. Sometimes we think showing up, the all or nothing mentality isn't helpful. But I really am a big fan of done is better than perfect. How can you just show up even if it's imperfect, because by you showing up, everybody benefits.
Perfect. And then another question came in is what is the best way not to live in the past and let go permanently so you can be more present and achieve dreams?
I love this question. Thank you for asking. The best way to not so here's the truth, right? The past has happened and it has shaped our reality today. So as much as I would love to be like, don't think about the past, that's actually not helpful because typically as I mentioned, I went through yoga teacher training and then mindfulness certifications. So what I learned is that our thoughts typically take place in the past or in the future. Like we're either envisioning the future or we're remembering the past. So to be in the present moment is to be where we are right now, and it's not that easy. So I think what your question really ties to is how can you learn from the past, but accept it so that you can be present and start creating the future that you want intentionally. So the first thing I would say is if you're still holding on to the past and there's something there that is keeping you holding on, like maybe you need to forgive yourself for the past. Maybe you need to forgive somebody else for the past. Maybe there is lessons from the past that have been coming up. Like, have you really been able to learn the lessons from what your past has taught you? So some of my favorite tools for this is journaling. If you're not a journaler, then you can even do like voice notes or video messages, but really reflecting on like where do I need to forgive myself? Who do I need to forgive? What am I still bringing with me that is no longer serving me? These are just kind of reflection questions for you. Uh Therapy is also a great way of really processing the past, and then working with a coach is a great way of intentionally creating your future. So I would definitely I'm a big proponent of any of those. If you can't afford a therapist, a journal is going to be a great asset for you. And then practicing something like mindfulness, and really, even if it's just 5 minutes, looking up a YouTube video on mindfulness meditation or a meditation for present moment or a meditation on gratitude. That is really going to support you in moving forward. Hopefully that was helpful. A lot of content creation questions. So there's a question on can you share more on how to handle increased expectations and responsibilities as a content creator? Yeah, it thank you for asking this question. So I think especially in today's society where there's a big narrative around like, oh, if you don't have an opinion, then like you do have an opinion type of thing. The way that I look at content creation is it's important for you to set an intention for why it is that you're creating content and stay in authenticity to yourself. So I have a my intention is to help people live in courage and not live in fear. That is the big intention behind my content creation. So as I funnel anything I share, it's through that, which allows me to actually share a lot of different things. So I'll share my dancing because I shared my dancing videos when I was a beginner and I was stepping on people. So like the courage to show up to dance class and showing my progress has been a part of my journey. Um, I think your question is probably leaning towards like if you have specific views on different topics, feel I would say share what you feel is an authenticity to you. The thing about social media and why it's such a vulnerable thing is that we are putting ourselves out there and sometimes strangers can comment, right? And they don't even really know us. And it does require a lot of courage and a lot of vulnerability to show up. So with the expectations and responsibility as a content creator, set the intention for what your page is and live in authenticity to that. Rather than being reactive of like, oh my gosh, this person said this one thing, so now I have to like show up in this way. Decide how you want to show up and already make that decision ahead of time, and that's going to support you. And then if you feel like changing it, change it, but change it because you want to. It's okay to block people. It's okay to, I mean, I've had, especially on TikTok when things went viral and people that were no longer my target audience, they would take my message so out of context, and it's okay to block people. So hopefully that's helpful. I know that we're at time. We have one more question here. Do you want me to answer it or should we?
I think you can go ahead and do like a 30-second, one
Okay.
minute quick answer.
Sounds good. How did you do your personal brand strategy? Did you work with somebody or did you do it yourself? I started myself just on Canva, doing my own like branding. And then after a while, I ended up working with the design team who helped me do a complete rebrand. They helped me with this photo shoot. They helped me choose the colors, the fonts, anything that you're doing for the first time. I call it the ghetto first draft. You want to do it the most ghetto, cheap, fast way of doing it just to get started, because it can be so easy to get caught up on a website and the colors. Just pick something and go with it. Once it's already validated that you want it, then you can invest in somebody. This is like a good strategy for any creative project, any business.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know there are questions coming in the chat and things like that, but thank you everyone for coming and sharing and participating. I know my little notebook is completely full. And someone said that they identified with all of the numbers. Me too. I had a lot of, for instances, pop up where I was like, oh, I was definitely a 2 that time. So I have some homework and some takeaways. But thank you everyone for coming. And this event will be recorded. It will take me a little bit to get it up on our YouTube site, but check in around Monday and it should be fully up. But until next time, friends, bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.